Good evening, viewers. This is the Monday, March 1st, 2021 meeting of Committee of the Whole. This is our typical council's meeting night, so this is a special meeting of Committee of the Whole to deal with some pressing issues. I am Councillor Nikki Dwyer, and I will be chairing Committee of the Whole meetings for the month of March. It looks as though we have a full quorum of council present with no members absent, and I will ask CAO Morris for a quick roll call of staff. Thank you.
Yes, so this evening we have Treasurer Kozil with us, Director Costello, Jennifer Miller, our Manager of Economic Development, and of course Nadine Bennett, our Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Malcolm. I'll start by calling for amendments to the agenda tonight. Seeing none, I'll move on. Because of the nature of the meeting, we do not, oh, sorry, I should call for disclosure of monetary interests. Any disclosures? No. Should you change your mind, please identify your monetary interest later in the agenda. We have no delegations tonight, nor adoption of minutes. CAO Morris, do we have any directors' reports that are pressing tonight?
None this evening, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We have no correspondence items, again, due to the nature of the meeting, and we have no in-camera issues being presented tonight. So I'll move on to item 1 of our agenda, the internal borrowing authorization bylaw for LED street light project, presented by Treasurer Kozil. So Janet, when you're ready, I'll leave it to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in April 2020, Council approved an LED street lighting project, a conversion project, with the direction that this would be funded through internal borrowing from our Building Services Obligatory Reserve Fund. And to note that the current balance of this reserve is currently 1.38 million. With the recent completion of this project, I'm here this evening requesting Council's approval to proceed with this internal borrowing bylaw in the amount of $535,183.38. So as presented in my report, the annual repayments have been based upon the projected energy and maintenance savings of approximately $103,000 anticipated from this project. This will result in a payback period or term of approximately 4.25 years. So just to outline some of the benefits of this financial strategy: lower interest rates. They're based upon the current interest rate for that reserve fund, which is 0.725. So in comparison, the complex loan we took out through the RBC was 2.13 interest rate. So the loan repayments can increase to accommodate any additional actual cost savings derived from this project at any point, and without penalty, which we would incur through the bank. And no impact on the town's borrowing limit, as this internal borrowing will be considered unfinanced capital outlay on our financial statements as opposed to long-term debt. So with that, have you had any questions?
Thank you, Mrs. Kozil. Councillor Alfred, your hand's up first. But before you start, I will note, I believe we're missing Councillor McGuire, who I thought I had seen at the beginning of this meeting, but he seems to have disappeared. Councillor Alfred, you're clear to proceed with comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was curious, Janet, have we done this type of internal borrowing before? Have we ever been in a position to do it? It would probably be more.
Well, we have been. We've had this reserve built up for a while, and no, we have not. I've kind of reviewed this with our auditor to see it's within our the realm of what we can do. And I just thought this was a good opportunity to do that, given that we have projected borrowing for the water and the wastewater capital projects. So we thought we'd kind of leave that for that purpose and freed up this for this project.
No, and Madam Chair, if I could just make a couple comments. I think this is brilliant. I think this is a great idea for us when we're in the position to do so, to borrow from ourselves. And I have advocated it on a couple of occasions privately with the CAO, because I think when we have those kinds of reserves and they're not committed, this is a wonderful way to fund something, especially with this one. The ROI is in five years. And already, if I recall correctly, Director Dunlop had said we'd saved, I think, something $6,000 on our first bill after the conversion. So I applaud your ingenuity and foresight to go ahead and put this before council. I support it.
Thank you, Councillor Alfred. Nothing but praise for Treasurer Kozil for your excellent brilliance. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? I see smiles all around. So I understand, Treasurer Kuzil, that this will be continuing to council meeting tonight for a bylaw, I believe. If Clerk Bennett wants to confirm that, I believe we're proceeding to a bylaw.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Having no further questions for Treasurer Kuzil, we'll move on to item 8.2, the parking bylaw report by Director Costello.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bring before you this evening a amendment to the town's parking bylaw. We've had numerous amendments through the years. However, this is probably one of the more comprehensive we've done in the last decade. So back in 2020, as council will recall, you made the decision to allow for 2-hour parking in the downtown core. So we did some necessary revisions to the parking bylaw at that time. Since that time, we have worked with PN Parking Solutions, which is Paula Nichols. She drafted the first parking study that was done for the town. So we've been working with her to refresh the parking bylaw to meet what we hope would be the wishes of council for parking within the downtown core. Some of the highlights of the amending bylaw: we've revised and refreshed the definitions to reflect provincial standards. We've removed any provisions related to metering and removed references to the parking dispenser, the one that is currently in the Market Street parking lot. We've also added some language regarding virtual parking permits and new terminology, as the hope is that once this bylaw is adopted, we can move forward with an RFP for an e-ticketing parking solution. All the schedules have been reviewed and updated. One of the main changes you'll see is the Market Street lot that we're recommending that it be done by permit only, whether it be day, weekly, monthly. We're also going to look at having overnight parking in the winter to accommodate residents in the downtown core. We are looking at doing that with a small percentage of the spots in the interim, just to see how it works with snow removal. But that would accommodate some of the needs we've heard in our office in the past couple of years regarding residents who live in the downtown core. Going with council's wish, we're looking at regarding the 2-hour parking, but we're looking to have that within the DBA boundary. We're also looking at having complimentary 3-hour parking on the streets immediately outside the DBA boundary. We're looking at rescinding the free parking in December and veterans parking, as they'll no longer be required with the free 2-hour parking provision. We're also in the midst of updating the set fines, and I will bring to your attention that we just today received the approved set fines from the Ontario Court of Justice for the revisions that you made in November for the 2-hour parking on Beckwith Street and the one block over. Winter parking provisions remain. We did look at this, whether to shorten this or not, but upon consultation with Director Dunlop, we decided to leave them the way they were, which commences in mid-November. We're also looking at increasing the fees for the parking lot on Market Street from a 25-cent for every 2-hour to a $5 daily fee, 25 monthly fee, and a $50 monthly overnight fee. With these permits, we're also going to be, especially the overnight, we'll be looking at agreements to have in place to ensure that people who are parked there overnight are aware of the provisions regarding overnight parking and times that their automobile would be required to be removed for snow removal operations. So that's the main revisions in the report. I'm happy to take any questions that council may have. I did attach to the report all the amendments with the schedules, so I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Director Costello. Councillor Alfred, you're first up again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This one is of particular interest because I also sit on the DBA board. So I, over the weekend, consulted with some of the other board members just to make sure that they didn't have any thoughts on it. I do have some ways. I did have one out of curiosity. Carrie, maybe you can answer this. If someone were to stay beyond the 2 hours and were ticketed, and then they stayed another 2 hours, would they get another ticket?
Yes, potentially.
Perfect. To the DBA, enforcement is going to be key here in not having meters and in keeping the traffic moving through the downtown core to accommodate the shopping. do you have, Carrie, a communications plan to roll this out? We don't want to ambush either people visiting or the business community having someone run in and be upset about getting a ticket. So we want to take whatever time there is to, a week or two to let people know it's coming. And so then the DBA can also get that word out to all the business owners. So do you have plans for a communications piece?
So thank you. The three points to your question. The first is we did beef up enforcement. Specifically, we knew we would need, especially with the 2-hour provision, we knew we would need increased enforcement, specifically for parking. The second point is, yes, I was in discussions this afternoon with Jennifer Miller, Manager of Economic Development, about the potential of using Amy to draft a bit of a communication out to the DBA, out to the residents, something we can put on our social media platforms and websites to get the word out to our local residents as well as businesses. The third point to that is there will be a bit of an educational time frame simply when we're waiting for set fines. So in the time it takes for us to apply for set fines and for them to come into effect for this round of amendments, we could use that as a bit of an educational campaign transitional period for these new provisions.
Thank you. And there was just one other thing coming from the DBA. The thought was that perhaps it would be of benefit to revisit this bylaw in 1 year and consult the DBA on their thoughts on how it's working, so that we give this a fair trial and let our business members downtown have some input should there be changes needed, because this is a totally new system for our town.
That's a great concept, a great idea.
Okay, so you can put that on the calendar for a year from now then, Carrie, to bring it back.
Will do.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, Councillor Alfred. Councillor Brennan, did I see your hand up?
You did. Thank you for this. The set fines, there is some revenue loss with the 2-hour free parking, and the consensus is we need enforcement to make sure that the 2 hours is respected. Is there any idea of what those fines may be?
I want to say that the set fine, Councillor Brennan, would be around $20 for that. Don't quote me on that. Paula Nichols, our consultant, has been trying to do some research on set fines to make sure we're in the happy medium, is what we technically usually try to do with set fines. But we are looking at increasing that, as you just stated, to offset the revenue we're losing from the meters. So it would be increased from the $5 we've seen for many years now for an expired meter.
Yeah, and I think that figure that you just mentioned is probably the norm around Eastern Ontario. So thanks for that. Yeah, and it has to be approved by the government, right?
Ontario Court of Justice, you're correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. Councillor McGuire, was your hand up next? You've turned off your video, but you're still muted. All right, we'll come back to Chris. We lost him. Mayor Panko?
Oh, Chris is back there now.
Oh, okay. Chris, are you ready?
Yeah, sorry, I've got a spotty connection tonight. I was wondering about the 3-hour parking on the fringe areas. Director Costello, will that be enforced by complaint or regularly?
It'll probably be a bit of both, but mostly we're going to try to keep it on the same, when bylaw goes out to do their normal path around the DBA, we're going to try to make it as part of their normal walking course.
Okay, I think personally, that area on the edges, I don't mind if there's an issue there. I like the idea of the 3-hour parking, but there's a lot of residences. Mm-hmm. And if I was going to want to spend my whole day downtown and grab lunch and do some shopping and really get the full experience, I would probably park there to avoid it. So I wouldn't want I wouldn't want people to get stuck with a fine if there's no signage. So I'm wondering, how will we inform people in those outer areas about that?
there will most definitely be signage in place once for the 2-hour and for the 3-hour. Anything that we want to put a fine to, we have to ensure that we have proper signage in place to inform residents or businesses or tourists of the provision. So there most definitely will be signage, Councillor Maguire.
Okay, thank you. I think my preference would definitely be for a complaint-driven system for the 3-hour parking, but yeah, I think it's great that we're getting this updated, and thanks a lot for your report.
Thank you.
Mayor Pankow, you're next.
Yeah, on the same thing on the 3-hour free parking outside the DVA zone. I'm wondering if it would be make an exception on weekends to encourage people to come downtown and spend the weekend, spend the day downtown, rather than having to be even further away. Because you're thinking, Carrie, I guess it'd be the first block beyond the DVA, which would be the 3 hours, and after that would be just regular free parking. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay. So I'm just wondering if maybe an exception on Saturdays to permit parking to encourage people to use their downtown. Secondly, I guess from a signage standpoint, I mean, I know signs are necessary and we want to see them there. Do we have a strategy about how they're going to be employed, where they'll be? And like my concern would just be, we've got a beautiful new downtown streetscape, and signs are not the most visually appealing parts of it. So I was hoping that they can be like strategically placed and potentially minimized to not take away from the streetscape. And finally, just a veterans parking on Remembrance Day that we brought in a couple of years ago. Is that not for the full day?
My recollection is that the veterans parking was for 2 hours. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know if Deputy Clerk Bennett she's the one who brought that forward a couple of years back. My recollection, it was for 2 hours.
Sorry, Deputy Clerk Bennett.
Right, you are correct, Director Costello. This was something you might recall was brought forward from a Legion member and the Legion, and it was to allow those members with a veteran plate to park for free for 2 hours. So that was a special bylaw that council passed, I believe it was 2-3 years ago now.
Yes. Okay, thank you. But my only concern there, I guess, is that by the time many arrive on Remembrance Day, they're arriving by 10 a.m. They stay for a lunch and a social time, and they're likely going to be there for more than 2 hours. And I obviously wouldn't want to see a veteran getting hit with a $20 fine when they were here to pay the respects on Remembrance Day. So I guess consideration to maybe extend that. And some are there very early in the morning. I might come in at 9 o'clock in the morning trying to get things ready. So I would say from 9 to 5 on Remembrance Day for anyone with a veteran's plate would be my preference.
Director Costello, do you want to provide comment on that?
No, actually, I just there's two items right now that Councillor or that Mayor Pankow brought up. Just wanted to know if there was consensus with all of council. One being I think this was Mayor Pankow, I'm sorry if it was Councillor Maguire, the 3 hour to allow the 3 hour on weekends on the perimeter was one issue that I believe that was brought up. And the second, the one that Mayor Pankow just brought up, the veterans parking on Remembrance Day to offer a provision for Remembrance Day parking. So if council concurs with those two, we can have those two written into the bylaw.
Okay, council, let's start with the second, the Remembrance Day parking, complimentary Remembrance Day parking for veterans. Is there any thumbs up all around? Perfect, that's easy. Okay, Carrie, can you walk through what the first one is again? So all areas surrounding the DVA are going to have 3 hour complimentary parking, and enforcement will be based on a complaints-driven basis. Is that what I heard?
So my apologies, Deputy Clerk Bennett just confirmed with me that the parking provisions right now for the 3 hour and 2 hours Monday through Friday. So we wouldn't need to add the provision for weekends, Mayor Pankow. My apologies.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Allen, do you have any comments on this?
I just a quick one, Madam Chair. I think this is a welcome bylaw. I know that Jay and Sean and I have for the last many years had this come and go, trying to resolve whether to keep the meters, to have pay meters, or to get another kind of payment method, or what we were going to do in the downtown. And I know I served in the DBA, and it was a hot item then. So I'm happy that Councillor Alfred talked to them. And I'm hopeful that that year will give us a sense of whether or not it's working, but it's a welcome change, I think, in the downtown. And from what I'm experienced when I drive and walk downtown, it seems to me that the new parking is working really well. Like, you don't see any problem. I know we had a lot of thoughts that it was going to cause congestion. I find just the opposite. I walk downtown almost every day, and I don't see that happening. So congratulations to staff. I think this is a great bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had 3 points, if I may. Just starting with Councillor Alfred's suggestion that we review this in a year. I have concerns, which I expressed initially about we were going to put in infrastructure for smart meters and that, and we decided not to as a council, which I support. I didn't at the time, but I do now because everybody's on board. So in a year from now, we're going to have invested in signs and not have invested in any infrastructure. I don't want us to think that, or I hope we're not thinking that we made a big mistake. We've got to go back in and tear up the sidewalks and put in new signs and put in those meters. We deliberately said, let's think this through because this has long-term and costly implications, and council decided not to. So if it's just tweaking or looking at signs, but we've made a long-term commitment to this. So I don't want us to come back in a year and say, oh, we've made a major mistake. So I just want us to be cognizant of that. We had this discussion already. This is a long-term decision that we decided to make. Secondly, of the 147,000 in parking / bylaw enforcement, either Director Costello or Treasurer Kozio could help me understand is there a cost center for the parking portion of that? Because that wouldn't be exclusively parking. That would also be animal control or property standards. Do we know the portion of that would be allocated to parking?
I do know that information, Councillor McKenna. I don't have it at my fingertips, but you are correct. The 147,000 is allocated between property standards, animal control, parking, sign bylaws. It's against they enforce many different bylaws. Obviously, the majority is funded where it goes to parking enforcement, but I can send you out how it's allocated in the morning via email if you'd like.
Well,
sorry, Treasurer Kozio, would you like to answer that as well?
Sorry, just to confirm the question, you wanted to know what the enforcement was budget-wise between the two, bylaw or parking and bylaw?
Yes, do you have that, Janet?
I do. It's 100,000 for parking and 47 for animal control.
Thank you.
And if I may, Madam Chair.
You may.
So the increase, we beefed it up in order to strengthen our enforcement piece of that. We also, so the bylaw, so the parking portion of around 100,000, that's where we really beefed it up. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to understand that. And finally, there's parking of automobiles. I wondered, I went through the town's bylaws. We're silent on the parking of bicycles, and we're trying to promote that. Did our consultant have any comment on, because we'll now have bike lanes and people will be parking their bicycles downtown, and we seem to be silent on bicycle parking. Do we have another bylaw coming, or would it be included in this? We're going to amend it down the line, or what thought is given to that?
This bylaw is specifically for automobile or vehicle parking. I'm not aware of the plan. I know Manager of Economic Development, Jen Miller, is working on some cycling initiatives, and I'm not sure when that'll be coming forward, but perhaps CAO Morris has more information on that.
CAO Morris, you have comments to lend?
Yes, thank you. So bicycle parking, it's a good question. We'll deal with bicycle parking in two ways. One is the active transportation plan that we're working on this year. The other would be the cycling tourism strategy to make sure we have ample parking. But it's not in this bylaw because it's neither regulated from a cost point of view or a time of stay point of view. So this bylaw you're seeing is really addressing the enforcement of length of stay. And at this point, we're not planning on putting limitations on length of stay for bicycles.
No, if I may, it's more, we're going to have bike racks downtown for parking. So the DBA may comment when people start locking their bikes up against trees or against their buildings or against in places where we really, so I just encourage us to think about even a short-term strategy on how we're going to manage that this spring and summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. That's a great point and noted. Councillor Alfred, I'm going to park your follow-up question for just 1 second to provide my own, and then I'd like to do a straw vote on the request for a one-year review. So, Carrie, kudos on the solution to long-term winter parking. I feel like that's that challenging aspect of managing a parking bylaw. I mean, we acknowledge, particularly downtown, that there's residents that live there all year long. They don't just live there in the summer. But we also want to maintain clear and free egress down the right of way. Thank you, Owen, for vehicles coming, or rather for the snowplows coming to and fro. So I think the solution that you guys have proposed is a good one. Hopefully it pays off in the long term and provides an opportunity for some off-street sustainable winter parking. I'm also so glad to see the recognition of free parking everywhere per our previous discussions. That was something that I campaigned hard on, and I was so relieved when council endorsed that. So I, like Councillor McKenna, am proud to see that in there. And while I respect the DBA's request to review the decision, I would suggest one of two things, and we can come back to this. One, if we're going to do a review, I don't think it should be within a year because we're going to be going into another construction process. And that will put a strain on the existing parking that's already been completed and would not provide us with accurate representation of long-term use of downtown parking. So if we're going to do a review, I would suggest that we do so in 2 to 3 years. That also puts it in a different term of council. And if there is a change during the election for priorities on council, then I think that gives the new council ample opportunity to discuss and revisit. But I, for one, would not vote to reconsider free parking downtown. And I think I have made that clear to date. Carrie, can you also comment on whether or not we considered putting in any additional parking requirements across other areas of town? The bylaw seems to be centered specifically to the downtown and downtown fringe areas. And we seem to be blessed to not have parking constraints within our new subdivisions at this point, knock on wood. But certainly the area up by the hospital sees issues with on-street parking. And I noted, I could not see a note in this current draft as to whether or not that was considered. Was there any thought to other areas of town and how on-street parking would be treated there?
There was a cursory review of outside of the DBA area. When we talked to Paula about that, we didn't see any change for that area. Possibly maybe increasing enforcement over, especially as you indicated, Councillor Dwyer, up near the hospital. Now with the increase in the enforcement and having one person dedicated to parking, that is very much a reality that we can do now with more enforcement in that area. We didn't see a need to change any provisions up in that area of town.
Okay, thank you. So just to clarify, any area of town outside the scope of this bylaw is enforced as marked. So if there are specific streets that are no parking zones, they will be marked accordingly, but there are no other time limits. So if you are parking on a street and there is no indication that it is a no parking zone, you are free to park there forever without moving your vehicle.
And ensuring that you're not in a spot where you're blocking someone's driveway or an accessibility spot, loading zone, things of that nature that are incorporated in the bylaw, but unless it's signed otherwise, you're correct.
Okay. And I mean, we've been blessed in town to not have horrendous parking issues. I mean, the other area that I recall historically there being concerns with was over next to St. Francis, the old St. Francis, which is no longer an issue because the school's no longer there. But I mean, I wouldn't write into the bylaw at this point restrictions on parking elsewhere based on the fact that we aren't having concerns, but that's not to say that it's maybe not something we should consider the next time we do a housekeeping amendment to the bylaw. So that's all of my comments. Councillor Alfred, you had a follow-up comment that you wanted to add, and then I'll call for a straw vote on the 1 year / 2 year review of the policy.
Yeah, mine was more to alleviate any nervousness on the part of Councillor McKenna, because the DBA has not any intentions at this point in time of ever thinking about having meters again. The year revisit would be to tweak what we have, potentially tweak fines, see how it's working. And, you know, at some point in the future, we may want to discuss another parking lot in or close to the downtown. So no, meters are gone and they're probably never coming.
Okay, thank you. Director Costello?
Thank you. Councillor Draw, I just wanted to go back to your point. I did want to reiterate that we do have a 24-hour provision in our bylaw, though, so that vehicles can't be parked in excess of 24 hours in any spot. I don't want people to think that they can park anywhere for excess of 24 hours. So that is a ticketable offense.
Thank you. That does help clarify. I wasn't sure if that existed or not. And I've certainly seen places where vehicles have sat for weeks at a time. So thank you for clarifying that. Councillor Brennan, I think I saw your hand up, then Councillor Allen's, and then Mayor Pankow.
Yeah, not to belabor it, but you know, I think that you know, I'm supportive of this report, and you know, to revisit it. I mean, any councillor at any time can request a revisitation of it. So I don't know that needs to be written into it. So I don't think that needs to be in it at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. Councillor Allen?
I just wanted to add that the snow removal, you can't park overnight during winter. And there's going to be snow removal either. So you can get a fine for that. And I know on our streets, I'm on Maple, all the side streets, a lot of people come and spend, you know, a long time parked there. And that hasn't been a problem, just as long as they don't think that they can park overnight because they can't.
No, you're correct. Winter parking provisions remain.
Duly noted. Thank you, Councillor Allen. Mayor Pankow?
Yeah, just, I guess you're calling a straw vote. I guess the question really is, what are we calling a straw vote on? I think there's seems to be support to review this in a year, but have a report come with the overall results of the previous year. But I don't see any intent really to do an exhaustive, I guess, questioning of where we go from that point forward. So in my mind, the policy is in place. We might want to hear some updates on the progress and any challenges, but I don't think there's any intent to overhaul the system, certainly not within a year or further. And to your point earlier, Madam Chair, I mean, we have construction within the next year. We still have COVID. We don't have a normal year, probably not for a couple of years out at least anyway.
Thank you. So Mayor Pankow, are you suggesting that we, similarly to the stance that Councillor Brennan suggested, that we leave it to staff to determine when and if a review is appropriate based on experiences with implementation of the bylaw?
Yeah, I think a report in a year is fine. Just sort of like what was the fine revenue, what kind of issues we've had, those kinds of details in approximately a year. And I don't think we need a hard timeline on that. But yeah, I think it was fairly open, but I'd like to hear back at some point in time on how it's gone.
Thank you, Mayor Pankow. Is there consensus from council for the suggestion from Mayor Pankow to leave this up to staff to evaluate and provide kind of an annual review on? I see some nodding heads. Yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Councillor Allen, are you saying yay or you have a question?
I'm just saying yay.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay, Director Costello, I believe, Sierra Morris has a comment.
Yeah, just a point of clarity. So council will recall that at the beginning of the pandemic, you made a decision to suspend parking fees. That's still in place. So just again, for clarity, once this is passed, fees at the lot will be back in place. There'll be different fees, but so essentially by approving this, we're resuming off-street parking fees. I just want everyone to be clear about that.
Thank you, CAO Morris. I don't think that was a piece that many of us picked up on. Does anyone have any concerns or objections? Councillor Alfred?
No objections, but as I said earlier, if we could make sure that we give some grace period to notify everybody that that's what's happening. That's the only proviso. Other than that, I support it.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Alfred. Thank you, CAO Morris, for the clarity. Director Costello, I believe you have your direction, and this is proceeding as a bylaw, not this evening to council, but rather to the next meeting of council. Is that correct?
I believe Deputy Clerk Bennett has it on the agenda for this evening.
Oh, my apologies. I think I missed it when I was scanning the agenda.
Yes, it is on the agenda tonight. If council is supportive, it'll just give us the lead time to start applying for set fines. If not, we can defer it to a future council meeting.
No, that's fine. I don't see any objection to that. So it'll proceed tonight. Thanks for the clarity. Director Costello?
Sorry, just one further point. It will go this evening. However, we won't, until we have the set fines approved, we won't have it in full force and effect and as well until we do our educational campaign.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to priority item 8.3. This item is with Councillor Brennan, respecting a correspondence item from February 22nd, 2021 meeting, letter from the County of Lanark regarding Leeds, Grenville, and Lanark District Health Unit. And I believe the original correspondence was a letter drafted by the warden on behalf of County Council regarding support and general endorsement of the good work that our local health unit has been doing respecting COVID. Councillor Brennan, I'll let you take over.
Okay, I mean, yes, and this letter was written to Dr. Stewart on February 2nd. I think it's still very, very relevant. And when it was on our agenda, and I suggested we bring it up at a committee of the whole to discuss and perhaps endorse as well. With the committee's indulgence, I'll read the letter because I think it has a lot of good information in it.
Please continue.
Okay, thank you. So it's written to Dr. Stewart. Dr. Stewart at his regular council meeting on January 27th, 2021. Council again discussed our sincere appreciation for the dedicated efforts of the Leeds, Grenville, and Lanark District Health Unit to protect our community as we continue to face the challenges and impacts from COVID-19. We are encouraged to see the vaccination program begin to roll out locally. As a result of council's conversation, the following resolution was passed, and that's moved by Councillor Vandermeer, seconded by Councillor Redmond. Whereas throughout the COVID-19 global pandemic, Lanark County has remained committed to protecting the health and safety of all residents and staff while taking prudent measures to stop the spread of the virus. And whereas in the weeks ahead, Lanark County remains vigilant in following the lead and endorsing health and safety measures established by the provincial government and the Leeds, Grenville, and Lanark District Health Unit. And whereas Lanark County Council continues to recognize and support Dr. Paula Stewart, Medical Officer of Health, and her team at the Leeds, Grenville, and Lanark District Health Unit and their continuous efforts since the onset of a fight against COVID-19 in early 2020. It is with pride and honor we thank